Be prepared for loud, obnoxious sounds and explosive cringe right from the very start and throughout.
Cake mix is... I don't know where I am. I think I've lost myself. I think I've lost the plot, dear. Some people say I coordinate too much, but then I just grab my bag and go. Hey, it's Mr. Larry, and we are crafting in the kitchen because baking is just another kind of crafting, and you get to eat what you make afterwards. And that's my favorite kind of craft. Today we're talking about cakes. No, we're not. Today we're talking about cake cookies. Cake mix cookies.
Girl, you can't make no cookies out of no cake mix. Like, what's that eating?
They're really easy, they're a lot of fun, and they allow you to be really creative if you want to throw in some mix-ins. These are cookies made of cake mix because cake mix is easy to find, really cheap. It doesn't matter if it's national brand, it all works the same as long as it's a basic modern day cake mix. And they really make a nice big cookie that's good for sharing. This isn't anything super new. A lot of you may be already familiar with this. There are three things that I think you should know before we get started in our project today. The first of which, also known as thing number one. Cake mixes have been around since 1930 when they were introduced in a patent by P. Duff and Sons from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This was really just an effort to offload some surplus molasses. They paired those molasses with wheat flour, powdered eggs, powdered milk, and a few other things. And there you have cake mix in a can. Which brings us to thing number two. Thing number two. Eggs were not initially a part of the store-bought cake mixes. There is an urban legend that states that they were added in the 50s, but actually, the eggs were introduced in a new version of the patent in 1935 after it was found that the public really just preferred fresh eggs over powdered ones. Home baking became a big industry in the period after World War II. Store-bought cake mixes remained popular until it fizzled in the early 50s. Which brings us to fact number 3. Going back to that urban legend, it's about this time that there was a new way of introducing cake mixes to the public. It was not the inclusion of eggs in the 50s that brought people back to the stores to buy cake mix, but it was the new craze of cake decorating that took its hold in the whole country during this time. Everyone competed to make the most outlandish, the most lavish, the most creative confections they could think of, all in their home kitchens. Brands like Duncan Hines and Betty Crocker followed suit by producing sprinkles and ready-mixed icings and frostings and all sorts of ways for people to customize these cake mixes. So really, it was the accessories that came along with it that changed the way people thought about baking. So much so that baking with store-bought mixes has become a staple in most households in our country ever since. Which explains why we're using them today for our project, because you probably already have a box in your house already. Another facet of our project that you'll need today. The toppings, the fillings, the sprinkles, all that sort of stuff. I recommend having at least a half cup of chocolate chips, or a 1/4 cup of sprinkles, or maybe both. You'll see what we'll be using those for once we get to the mixing part. But at this point, you can be as creative as you like. You'll select a cake mix box of your choice of flavor that you like. In addition to cake mix, eggs, and sprinkles, decorations, chocolate chips, candy pieces, whatever you have in mind. You'll also need oil. You'll need a plate or a shallow dish. You'll need a medium-sized mixing bowl, a spoon, a spatula, and an oven. And your brain, you'll need some creativity. Maybe you have an idea in mind already. I'm gonna make 2 different kinds of cookies today. I'm gonna use this chocolate one and pair it with dark chocolate chips. I'm also gonna make another kind with this white cake mix. And I'll probably mix in a bunch of these really pretty sprinkles because I'm still feeling that pastel Lisa Frank thing. We're gonna get into the projects today, and then do that. Let's get started. Firstly, I want to make sure that we have all the ingredients we'll need for today by starting with our cake mix, using whatever flavor you like. In addition to this, we'll need a couple of eggs per box of cake mix. So I have 4 eggs here. I want to use chocolate chips for one of the recipes, so just a half cup of those. I'll be using a 1/4 cup of my proprietary blend of sprinkles, which are all specific colors. And then I've got a half cup of oil. This is 4 ounces here, along with a cookie scoop. And then I have a spatula and spoon just in case. And then I've got my mixing bowl. I'll start by pouring the contents of the cake mix into the bowl, and then I'll use a whisk to break the lumps up that might be in there. You could also do this by using a sifter, but I didn't have one on hand, so this works just as well. Next, I'll add in the eggs one at a time. A good baking tip I learned a while ago is that if your eggs and other ingredients are all room temperature, it really makes for a better baking experience. So I usually stick by that rule. These eggs have been out for a little bit to get them to room temperature. I'll mix the ingredients together gently, adding in the oil to help incorporate all the liquid together. I'll switch from a whisk to a spatula in a moment so that I can better get the dry powder on the bottom of the bowl and on the sides. I'm making sure to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl as I gently mix it all together until it starts to form a really dark chocolatey dough. I'm going to add in my chocolate chips, and then using a technique called folding, I'll incorporate them into the dough gently. And basically all you're doing is pulling the dough and the contents that you're mixing into it from the sides and the bottom in a manner that sort of looks like folding the dough onto itself and then squeezing it back into there, and then doing the same thing over and over until you get a nice consistently filled dough. I'll use my scoop to portion out cookies onto the pan, and then these will go directly into that oven at 350 degrees for just 10 minutes. They come out looking really gorgeous. They have this distinctive sort of crackle on the top, and they're really thick and warm, and when you break them open they have this really great brownie-like texture. They're really just a wonderful cookie. I'll be using the other box of cake mix for a different kind of cookie. This time we're using a white mix, so I'm just going to use egg whites for this recipe. You can use full eggs for this recipe if you don't mind your cake being a little bit darker in color, but really it doesn't make a huge difference. I just wanted very vibrant colors, so I wanted the dough to stay as white as possible. I'll mix in my colorful sprinkles now, which will give it that wonderful confetti appearance, and then fold those in until my dough is completely formed. I'll scoop each portion of the dough out and then dip it into the remaining sprinkles so that they stick into the top of the cookie. I press them out a little bit to give them a round shape, and then place them so that they have some space on the cookie sheet, and they go directly into the oven at 350 for 10 minutes. And now we have some beautiful, wonderful rainbow cookies. So now I'm going to make cookie sandwiches. I wanted to use this Betty Crocker whipped cream cheese in a can, but then I noticed that Pillsbury has a filled pastry bag ready to go right out of the store. So I opted for the lazier option instead. It comes in this lovely large size pastry bag with a star tip. And all you do from here is grab the end of that bag, twist it a little bit, so that you have some pressure, and then squeeze your hand gently as you move it around the shape that you want to make. In this case, I'm just filling the center of the cookie, and then I'll grab a second cookie and place it right on top of that. And there we have a cookie sandwich. And these things are absolutely delicious. It's probably going to give you some sort of sugar shock, but it might be worth it because they're very, very good. The chocolate one is even better, I think. I don't know, it's really hard to choose. One is sort of like eating birthday cake, one is like eating the brownie of your dreams. It's just a wonderful day in the house of Mr. Larrie. And I'm just gonna steal that real quick. I'm like trying to do a show and I can't even stop. It's so good. Oh my God. Y'all, thank you for joining me today. For some of you, it might be your first time trying to bake something, and I think that's fantastic because we all start somewhere. I started with a book on Martha Stewart cupcakes, and it was not until I was halfway through that I realized that liquid measurements are different from dry measurements. So we all have a journey to go on, no matter what we're trying. But I hope you enjoyed this part, and if you did, please leave a comment or a message for me, or subscribe, or like, or thumbs up, or whatever you're supposed to do. I hope that you've got a wonderful weekend ahead of you, and that you are staying strong, positive, and creative. I'll see you next week. You just fold it in. I'm gonna try this one more time. Ooh.